Hi, I'm Tinny from Mini Bowl Design, and today I'm setting out here in my wood shed, which I haven't put my wood in yet, setting on my second recumbent trike. It's a rainy day, and I really draw the line at riding this trike in the rain. It doesn't have any fenders, and it's just not a pleasant thing to ride in the rain. It's nasty. Plus, I'm riding on a dirt road, so there's a lot of mud that spews up the back of your neck, and the road softens up and it rolls hard, so I'm not going to ride in the rain. I've been averaging 15 miles a day lately. The mileage keeps creeping up, so with that many miles a day, I can afford to take a day off now and then. So today, rather than ride, I built all day. I've been trying to limit my building time to, I was doing 4 hours a day, but if I built stoves for 4 hours and then I went out and worked on the trike for a couple hours, starting to have trouble with my wrist. I've got a mild case or medium case, maybe even a severe case of carpal tunnel. And if I do a lot, I inflame the tendons in my arm, and it pinches off the nerves and my hands go numb. So for the last 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, I took the days off, and today, hi Tigger, I built 10 wide mouth pots today, which is a formidable job. Took me about 4 hours, but because I'm not going to work on the trike today and I didn't ride the trike, it worked out okay. So getting past that, if you're not a gearhead or a cat person, you might want to turn the video off right now. But for the rest of you that are interested in stories, I want to share a story with you about this trike. This is my second trike, and the wheels on this are 27 inches in diameter with 1 1/4 inch tires. Now, the larger the wheels, the less rolling resistance they have, and the narrower the tires, the less rolling resistance. So this trike rolls significantly easier than my first trike, which had 20-inch front wheels on it. But one of the problems I had, well, there were two problems. One is I kind of condemned these tires because when I mounted them, they were not even. They were all over the place, and they tend to wobble and weren't pretty. Well, unlike most people, I'm going to confess that was my fault, and I learned later on, purely by trial and error, after thinking about it, that the reason why these tires were so bad, and I thought they were factory rejects, the reason why they were so bad was they didn't mount evenly. They grabbed the rims, probably because the rims these are not expensive rims, and I'm not sure that was the reason, or whether it was just operator error. But when I mounted them this time, I let the air out of them and took some Dawn dishwashing liquid and lubricated the bead of the tire, pushed it away from the rim and lubricated it all the way around on both sides. Then when I blew the tires back up again, the bead couldn't grab the rim until it got all the way out, and they blossomed all the way out the way they were supposed to, and pretty much was straight. And even after I rode it a while, they tend to settle even more. So now these tires run relatively true, which is much more efficient when you're driving down the road. So that cured one problem, and that was just my fault because I just didn't know what I was doing. I don't know whether that's common for people to lubricate these before they put them on, but I found it's a really good idea, and it works really well. I also found out that if a rim is rated for a 1.5 or a 1/4 tire, you can't put a lot of different tires on it because of diameter problem. And these were rated for 1 1/4, and that's what I put on them, so I took care of that. Okay, that takes care of that one. Second problem I had, and a rather interesting problem, was that if I was going down the road with this and I hit a bump, it would tend to shimmy a little bit. But because I had my hands, it's direct steering, I could just push a little bit and get rid of it. But if I took my hands right off of the steering, it would start to shimmy, and as I went along, it would shimmy worse and worse to the point where it was completely uncontrollable. you had to grab a hold of it. As soon as you grab a hold of it, it stopped. Now, I suspected that the reason it was doing this was I didn't have enough caster in the front end. The steering geometry was off. And that's a troublesome problem, but because the only way for me to change the caster on this, you want to get down, would be to break these wells, grind these wells off, and remount this front axle with maybe another 5 degrees of casting. And that's a fairly large job considering that my front transmission is mounted to it, and it would be a whole afternoon of fairly hard work to get it all back together and get everything exactly where it's supposed to be. So before I undertook that, I decided to Google the problem and see what the world had to say about it. So I typed in recumbent trike, not bike, but trike, recumbent trike shimmy, and I got a whole bunch of hits. So I started powering through them and reading, and it took a while before I hit what I was looking for. Lo and behold, after I looked for a while, I found out that most of the cat trike, recumbent trikes, have a shimmy problem. If you're going down the road and you just let right go of the steering, because it's the direct steering like this trike is, it would start to shimmy and it would keep getting worse, and it would get uncontrollable after a while. Nobody would ever want to drive any distance with your hand off the steering, but nonetheless it would do that. So I said, okay, that tells me that maybe my geometry isn't off, because if cat trike had a problem and it was shimmy and it was geometry, they'd simply change the geometry on the next generation of trikes, but they didn't. But they did have a fix for it, and here's where the $1 million answer comes in. The fix for it is they take out the perfectly good tempered steel roller bearings and put in my opinion, an inferior Teflon bearing right here in this front axle, in this front knuckle joint. Now I thought to myself, why in the world would you want to take out a very low friction, high quality ball bearing and replace it with a far inferior plastic bearing? That just doesn't make good sense. It would be shorter lived, it would have more drag, it would have nothing I can think of for a characteristic that would be an improvement. It would all be, so I thought they're not doing it for an improvement or for simplicity or for a longer life. So then I thought, run it through the logic filter. What are the characteristics of it? What would be different? And one of the main differences is it would have more friction. It wouldn't turn as easy. So I thought, okay, then maybe they're not putting it in for any reason other than to create a little more friction, which would be the same as holding your hands on it. It would hold the steering a little bit more rigid so that it couldn't get flopping and going. And when they put in the Teflon bearings, it immediately cured the shimmy problem. So that told me that my steering geometry probably was not wrong, that these direct steering trikes have an inherent shimmy problem, just because of the design and the very low drag, because you're hanging right onto the steering. There's really no linkage or anything to create any drag. So what I did was, I mounted a block here, and right on the tie rod, and wrapped a piece of tubing around it with some duct tape, so that the tie rod, the tubing on the tie rod rubs on this block and creates just a mild drag, nothing big, just a little bit, just like Teflon bearings would. Shimmy went right away. The bike is perfect. Between remounting the tires and taking the shimmy out, I can drive it with one hand now, and it's just a dream to drive. It was really great before, but now being able to drive with one hand and having no shimmy is just, the icing on the cake. So for you gearheads and people that like to figure out mechanical things, that made my day. And that's pretty much all there is to know about that. I'm Tinny from Mini Bull Design. Get out and hike, take a friend, and more important than anything, have a really great day. And, hi Robert. Glad to hear from you again. Looking forward to going hiking with you this fall. I'm really missing you, man. Bye-bye.